Disney have been changing the landscape of Star Wars for quite some time now. So it makes me wonder, would the return of the Old Republic be a good idea? In previous Star Wars videos that I've made and also in the Star Wars community in general, I have noticed that different people have various opinions whether or not the Old Republic should return to Star Wars canon. Some people say that it should and other people say that it shouldn't. Now, I just want to make one quick clarification. I'm quite aware that Star Wars The Old Republic era is technically canon already. We heard that the Old Republic era was mentioned by one of the Mandalorian leaders in Star Wars The Clone Wars. So when I say the Old Republic should return to Star Wars canon, what I really mean is, should we see Disney Star Wars take on the Old Republic era, instead of relying exclusively on Star Wars Legends for reference to the Old Republic? Personally, I do think the Old Republic would be great to see again in Star Wars through books and video games and movies and shows or whatever have you. It would be great to see it once more in Star Wars. However, there are a few conditions that I think need to be applied before Disney Star Wars should try to touch the Old Republic era. Because, as many of you guys probably know already with Star Wars, Disney is trying to do a lot of different things, and Star Wars in many ways can be considered a little bit all over the place right now, because they are trying to build a massive timeline that they can kind of say that this is their stories, right? This is Disney Star Wars stories that they want to have full control over, which is fair. However, this puts them in a vulnerable position where they can struggle to make coherent stories and timelines, and as I've talked about before, they have shown previously that they overlap each other with their stories sometimes, especially when it comes to books versus movies and shows. So what I think is important for Disney Star Wars right now before touching the Old Republic era would be to keep developing and eventually conclude all of the main essential stories in their respective era before moving onwards to something like the Old Republic. One could argue that Disney have three eras right now that's kind of their focus. Number one would be the events that happened between Revenge of the Sith and all the way up to the upcoming Rey movie. For us, we can see they're clearly trying to fill up every single gaps between that, with shows like The Bad Batch, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and other upcoming movies that we'll see like Heir to the Empire and similar things. And the second era would be the High Republic era, which we have seen mainly in Star Wars novels. But later this year, we're gonna get the Star Wars Acolyte series, which takes place at the end of the High Republic era. Whether or not that series will conclude the High Republic era, we don't really know, but it's gonna be interesting to see. And for number three, we have the Dawn of the Jedi era, and we practically know very little about it. It was introduced to us back in 2023 during Star Wars Celebration, and it was one of those things that made me feel a little bit like, is this a smart idea? I don't know. But they really haven't talked much about it or shown us anything about it, because I think they want to conclude era number one, era number two, and then they go over to Dawn of the Jedi. And Dawn of the Jedi takes place before the Old Republic. So in my view, they need to now conclude all of these three big eras first, and then they can focus on the immensity and the importance of the Old Republic era. And by doing this, it will ensure that Disney have a good stable continuity with all of the stories that they create within the Old Republic. And of course, one may wonder, why not just replicate the stories that we already have in Star Wars Legends? Star Wars Disney is different than Star Wars Legends. Some people think that's unfortunate, other people don't really care. That's up to the individual, but the fact of the matter is Disney have other visions than what we're used to with Star Wars Legends. And that's just more how it is, and we just have to adapt. Now, with that said, there are many characters in Star Wars Legends from the Old Republic era that I would have loved to see in Disney Canon's version of the Old Republic. But that's obviously just hopeful dreaming and wishing, and they could return, possibly, or they could be completely ignored, which would be unfortunate for those who do enjoy these characters, and again, not unfortunate for those who don't really care, because there are people who don't really care. And that's completely fine, because people can have the opinions they want with Star Wars. And also for us who do love the Star Wars Legends material, we do have Star Wars Legends to always rely on, and no matter what Disney does with canon right now, we can always fall back to the older content and just consider that our head canon, which will make things easier for everyone. So, the Old Republic era should not be touched by Star Wars canon right now. However, later down the line, once they've concluded all of the other eras that they're working on, then we can see Star Wars The Old Republic return. And hopefully, it's going to be something that the majority love. But let me know what you guys think about the potential return for the Old Republic in Star Wars canon, and whether or not Disney should wait until they start developing that era, or if they should start giving us the Old Republic stories as soon as possible. And as always, may the Force be with you.